We learned how to find a missing angle on this one right here. Okay, so if we found one missing angle, the second missing angle is really easy. We just took it away from 90, right? And then we found this side. How do we find this side? We didn't even use a trig function to find this side. We just do Pythagorean theorem. If I know two sides of a right triangle, I can always use Pythagorean theorem to find the third side, okay? But what if we had a situation where we only knew one side of the right triangle, but we knew one of the other angles? So, sorry I'm making every single triangle look the same, but lack of imagination here. So we'll just make it look like this. There's my right triangle, and let's see. They tell us this angle is 61 degrees. And they don't know the hypotenuse, and this leg down here is 24. And they say solve the triangle. So we got to find all the missing stuff. All right? And let's just label it A, B, and C this time. We won't use theta on this one. All right? What's the easiest thing to find right now? Which one? Angle C. Yeah, absolutely. How do we find angle C? Just go 90, what? Minus 61. We don't have to use any trig at all, do we? And so what's that? That's a 9 and that's a 2. Is that right? So 29 degrees. So that's angle C. I'll tell you what, we'll call that Y as well because we got to find that side too. All right, so we know all three angles. But we only know one of the sides. Can I do Pythagorean theorem to solve for Y or to solve for X? No. You got to know two sides, don't you? Okay, we only know one side. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our trig functions. This is where it really comes in handy. All right? Hope everybody's watching. All right, I know you might have a test later. I see people looking at note cards and all that kind of stuff, but this is pretty important stuff to watch. So watch. I want to solve, what do you want to solve for first? X or Y? Y? Okay, I heard Y, so let's solve for Y first. So it doesn't really make any difference. So let's see, which angle do you want to use? Do you want to use the 61 or do you want to use the 29? And again, it doesn't make any difference. 29. The 29? Okay. For some reason, I kind of always use that one that's down here on the bottom. Okay, it doesn't make any difference, but let's use the 29. So we're going to use this angle right here, the 29 degrees. And we want to solve for this side right here. So what's the relationship between this side and the angle that we're going to use? It's opposite, isn't it? Now, I'm not going to use hypotenuse because I don't know what the hypotenuse is. I got to use one of the other sides that I actually know, which is this one right here. What side is this to the angle that I'm using? It's adjacent, isn't it? So I'll write that in there. Now, you don't have to write those in there. I'm just doing that for teaching purposes, all right, just to get you to see which ones are which. Now, let's write down our little mnemonic device, okay? So it's SOHCAHTOA, right? SOHCAHTOA. So we write that down so we remember it. Now, which one of these three are we going to use? I've got opposite and I have adjacent. Which one am I going to use? I'm going to use the TOA, which is what? What's the trig word? It's the tangent, right? So I'm going to use this one. Do you see how we found out to use that one? Because I'm trying to find the opposite side, and I know the adjacent side, so I have to use opposite and adjacent. This is the only one that has both of those, so that's the one I'm going to use. Does it make sense? All right, so I use the tangent. I always take the tangent of the what? Of the angle. Which angle am I using here? And I know the angle, though, don't I? It's 29 degrees. So I take the tangent of 29 degrees. This is a little different than we did earlier. Why is this different than we did earlier? Because before we didn't know the angle, did we? Now we actually know the angle. So, Cookie, this is what you were asking before. Why don't we just, hit the tangent button or the sine button? This is a situation where we just hit the regular tangent button. We don't have to hit the second function, do we? Because this says the tangent of 29. But what's the tangent of 29 equal to, though? It's equal to the what? The opposite over the adjacent. Which side is opposite here? It's y. Which side is adjacent? It's 24. So now what we're going to do, now we've got it all set up. I don't need to see the triangle anymore. Now I've got it set up. What am I trying to solve for here? Y. I'm trying to solve for y. I'm trying to solve for that right there. Now it's just a basic algebra equation. Y is on the top. 24 is on the bottom. How do I get rid of that 24? Multiply it by 24. So I multiply this by 24, and I come over here and I multiply this by 24. So look what happens. That cancels out. And now this is what I'm putting into my calculator. By the way, I should have mentioned this on the other one. Remember how we did this, the inverse sine of 5 over 12? Let me see your calculator, Destiny. If you have a calculator like this, if you have a TI 30XA, it's just a regular scientific calculator just with one line, right, for the display. If you have one like that, you would not hit second function first. What would you do first on a calculator like this? You'd hit 5 over 12 first, okay? Get an answer for it. Now, I can't do it on this one because this is not how this calculator works. But I would hit 5 divided by 12 equals. So watch, I'll do this. 5 divided by 12 equals, and I get some decimal, like 0.41666 keeps on going, all right? So I get a decimal. Then, once I get this, then I actually hit the inverse sine. So I hit second function and then sine, and look at that. I get the same exact answer, don't I? 24.62, blah, blah, blah. All right? Does that make sense? So if you have just a regular scientific calculator, you have to do things a little more backwards than what I'm doing up here. Hit 5 over 12 first, then second function sine. Okay, that was the old problem. Let's do the one that we're doing right now, okay? Let's do this one right here. Now, if you have a graphing calculator, this is what I would do. And I'll show you how to do it on a regular scientific calculator. No, then second function sine on that one. But on this one right here, it's different. So watch. I'm going to go 24. Now, I don't have to hit times on this calculator. This one, I can just write it exactly the way it looks right here. So I hit 24. Then I hit tangent. All right, you see that? Even puts a little parentheses for what's going to go in there. Then I hit 29. You don't have to, but I like to close the parentheses. That right there is exactly that, isn't it? All right, so I hit equals, and what do I get? 13.3. Now I'm finding the side of a triangle, so we're going to round this to one decimal place. So 13.3. So it's approximately 13.3. Just hang on to it. I'll talk you through it. Now, what if you had a calculator like Destiny's, a TI 30XA? All right, this is what you would do. You would not plug it in like this. All right, this is what you would do. You could do it a couple ways, but do it like this. Let's find the tangent of 29. So you don't hit the function first. What do? You hit the number first, and then you hit the tangent. So on those regular little scientific calculators, you hit the number first, then you hit the tangent. So you hit 29 tangent. You don't even have to hit equals. You get some decimal number, don't you? Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to multiply it by 24. So what do you hit? Times 24, and then you hit equals, and you should get 13.3. All right. Make sure you know how to do that on your calculator. You think, oh, I get to use a calculator, that's a piece of cake. Well, it can be pretty easy, and it's very useful. It's great to have the calculator on this. You know how sometimes I kind of say, don't always use calculator all the time. But with this tangent stuff, you basically have to use a calculator. You can't do that in your head. I mean, there's no way you know what the tangent of 29 is in your head, right? They used to make charts in the back of the book on this stuff, but they don't do that anymore. Okay, they use calculators. So that's how we do it. Does that make sense? All right, so let's go back up, and let's see what that is. So y was 13.3. Now what do we need to solve for? Yes?
So you only did the y because you're trying to solve for y. So
yeah,
you have
exactly.
adjacent for 24 and you're trying to find x.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do right now. Yeah, exactly. Let's do... come on, find a color. Just use red. All right. So let's do x. This is what you were asking, Cookie. We already found this. Now, technically, you could use Pythagorean theorem now, couldn't you? But I'm not going to because I'm going to teach you this trig stuff. You could go 13.3 squared plus 24 squared equals x squared, and then do your whole thing and solve for it. But I'm trying to teach you trig stuff, so let's do it with the trig. So let's use this angle again, this 29. But this time, we're trying to solve for x. What is the x to this angle right here? It's hypotenuse, isn't it? Now, let's pretend we didn't do the y, okay? Let's pretend we never solved for y. So what sides do we know? We know this adjacent side, right? And we are trying to find the hypotenuse. So what trig function are we going to use? We have adjacent and hypotenuse. Which one of these? It's this one right there. It's the cosine, isn't it? See? I've got adjacent and hypotenuse. Aaron Hamrick right there, okay? So adjacent and hypotenuse. So let's do the same thing. We're going to use what? The cosine this time, not the tangent. We're using cosine because we got adjacent and hypotenuse. So let's use the cosine. We're still using the same angle. Equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Which side is adjacent? 24. Over what? X, right, because that's the hypotenuse. Now, the algebra on this one's a little bit more difficult. The algebra here is pretty easy. We just multiply both sides by 24. But watch this. Are you watching carefully? If you if you've been asleep, you need to wake up because you got to watch what we're doing. Of course, if you've been asleep, you have no idea how we got to this point in the first place. But let's do the algebra. Look where x is this time. X is where? It's on the bottom. Where was the variable on the other one? It was on top. When it's on top, it's pretty easy to solve for. When it's on the bottom, it gives you one more step you have to do. What you're going to do is you're going to multiply both sides by x to put it on top. Everybody see that? But then you still got that cosine of 29. How am I going to get rid of that? Now, the cosine of 29 is just a regular number. You put that in the calculator, it's just some decimal number. So how do I get rid of a regular number that's being multiplied by x? I divide it. So what happens? The x goes on top, and the cosine of 29 goes where? On the bottom. So it might be easier if you just think of it this way. See how the x is on the bottom? I need to put it on the top. So I put it on the other side, and it goes on top. Then I got to get rid of this cosine of 29. That's already on top, so what am I going to put it if I put it on the other side? I'm going to put it on the bottom. Do you see it? If it was on the bottom, it's going to be on the top of the other side. If it was on the top, where's it going to be if I move it over? It's going to be on the bottom. So I just basically switch places with it, right? I just switch the x and the cosine of 29. So it's 24 over what? Not just 29, but the cosine of 29. Remember, the cosine of 29 is just a number. It's just a regular old number. It's a decimal number. It's kind of ugly. What did I say was the cosine of 29? Look, I'll show you. See, it's just that number right there, 0.8746, blah, blah, blah. So it's just a regular number. So I can do, I can work with this just like it's a normal number. So what do we do with this? Got to use a calculator at this point. It's really not that hard. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hit 24 divided by, now in this calculator, you hit the cosine first. On your calculator, you would do what? You hit 29 before you hit the cosine. On my calculator, I hit cosine first, then I hit 29. Doesn't that look exactly the same as that? But what if you had a little scientific calculator? You would hit 24 divided by, what? 29 cosine, then you would hit equals, and then you get your answer. Try it. You should get 27.4. 24, no. Listen to what I'm saying. It's 24. Look at what's going on here. It's 24 divided by 29 cosine. On your calculator, you would hit 29 cosine, then you would hit equals. All right? And you should get the same exact thing as I got right there, 27.4. Okay? Come on, just follow my steps. It's 24 divided by 29 cosine equals, and you'll get 27.4. Let me give you a worksheet. Let me give you a worksheet. And here we go.